I currently live on the third floor of an apartment building in rural Philippines. And on the first floor, there's a Japanese restaurant. My partner is the owner on paper. And I help with the business and sometimes work at the restaurant. We started this restaurant in 2019 after a lot of things happened. We moved to our current location, and before I knew it, it had been 7 years. Something happens almost every day and every time. I find myself thinking, what are we going to do now? So when I think about the fact that we've managed to keep the restaurant going for 7 years, I'm actually a little surprised myself. But these days, I'm grateful that this restaurant is right there, just downstairs from where I live. This is a really rural area, so there aren't many places where you can get Japanese food. If I want to eat decent Japanese food, I have to drive about an hour each way to the city, and it's actually more expensive than eating Japanese food in Japan. So because we have our own restaurant, I can eat Japanese food right here. And honestly, I'm pretty grateful for that. Of course, when we use imported ingredients, the price goes up. But I'd be a little sad if Japanese food became something that only people with money could afford here. This isn't a big city, so we want to keep the prices as affordable as possible for the people who live here. And somewhere along the way, I realized that the restaurant I originally started simply to make a living had become a part of my life itself. Living in this small town and all the things that happen at the restaurant have simply become my everyday life. 7 years ago, I never imagined that this would be my life. Today, I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to live in rural Philippines. I live in a town called Santa Barbara. About an hour by car from Iloilo City. It's close to the airport, but it's not really a place that foreigners come to visit. As far as I know, I'm probably the only Japanese person living here, and because it's a rural area, there really isn't much entertainment. When people hear the Philippines, they might imagine bars, drinking, and places where you can stay out late at night, but there's very little of that here. By around 8 at night, the town is already pretty quiet. People do drink, but it's more like sitting outside a small shop, drinking bottled beer and eating some snacks, that kind of thing. To be honest, when I first came here, I thought, there's really nothing here, but somehow, I stopped caring about that. When I was studying English, I spent some time in one of the more popular tourist destinations in the Philippines. And back then, my money disappeared incredibly fast. The more places I went to, and the more fun I had, the more money I spent. Of course, that kind of lifestyle can be fun too. But these days, I have a partner, and I don't have the same desire to go out and have fun that I used to. Instead, we have plenty of things to do every day. We're always talking about things like, how can we increase our sales? How can we make the restaurant better? And we spend our days trying to figure things out. Staff, customers, money. Something is always happening. So, just because there isn't much entertainment here doesn't mean my life is boring, actually. Sometimes, when I'm running the restaurant and living here, I think real life is much more dramatic than anything you can watch on TV. I live in a rural town where there's supposedly nothing to do, and yet something happens almost every day. That's my life here. One of the things that happened this month was that we had several days of very heavy rain and strong winds. Because of that, schools and some public facilities were closed for 3 days. 3 days with no school. If I had still been living in Japan, I probably would have just thought, that's tough. But living here, I've realized that when a school closes, it can affect the entire town. For example, there are tricycle drivers who take children to and from school. When school is closed, they lose that work. People who provide food at the school also lose work, and the small food stalls and restaurants that children normally eat at can lose their customers too. One school closes. It sounds like a small thing, but in reality, several different businesses and jobs around that school can stop at the same time. And what surprised me the most was how few people there were in the center of town. Normally, you see children, parents, tricycle drivers, school workers, and customers at the small restaurants. There are always people coming and going, but when the schools closed, the whole town became strangely quiet. It was almost like the town itself had gone to sleep. When you live in a rural area, you sometimes get to see things like this right in front of you. One event can be connected to the lives of far more people than you might expect, and when that one thing stops, even the whole atmosphere of the town can change. That's another thing I never really understood until I lived here. So what did we do with our restaurant? We decided to keep it open. Our sales dropped by about 70% over those 3 days. Honestly, that hurt. Of course, we could have closed the restaurant, but our staff have their own lives to support. Closing the restaurant doesn't mean the rent and salaries stop, so we opened anyway. The money goes out, the sales go down, but the next day comes, and we open the restaurant again. Are we going to have any customers today? That's the kind of thing I think about while I'm working. It's hard, really hard. But we have to make a living, so we just have to keep going. This is our reality right now, and tomorrow, we'll probably open the restaurant, just like we always do. Hopefully, we'll have some customers tomorrow. I'm curious what you think. If you were living in a small town like this, would you enjoy this kind of quiet life? Or would you get bored after a while? And if you're living outside your home country, I'd also like to know what surprised you most about your new life. Let me know what you think in the comments.